22nd. Hey, hello, everybody. It is January the 22nd, 2022. It is 2022 already. And we had announced the live, me and Michelle. We are just a couple minutes late. I know it's kind of odd the way we set it up through Facebook because some of you probably anticipate we'll go live right from that link. I'm going to check with the event. I've already posted on Family Forward Project that we were up and live, and I will probably do another post real quick. But we are doing this through StreamYard. We are live streaming into at least 4 different venues, to the Family Forward Project, to my YouTube channel, to California's Family Rise, and Family Forward California. So most of you know me. I'm Connie regularly. I'm here in Tennessee fighting the battle, and Michelle is in California fighting the battle. So a couple things we do want to talk about specifically, just about what's going on in California. I also want to share with you some things that I have done statewide legislatively, and how we're trying to move the goalpost, move closer to the goalpost here. So let's go ahead, and if you guys would make a comment just so that we know you're there, just say hello and share it if you want to your own page or your own group. I know there's lots of groups out there, and I am all for all groups talking all the time. The only way we can make a difference is that there is constant chatter. So I don't care what group you're in. There's some 60 groups. So just go ahead and share it, talk about it, share yours to us. I see we've already got somebody up there saying hi, y'all. So Michelle, why don't you talk to us a little bit? We wanted to address Congresswoman Karen Bass. Now, Congresswoman Karen Bass has been one who has proposed legislation several times. She is very concerned about foster youth. And I know that during COVID, there were a couple of bills that she proposed, and I know that really nothing is getting done in Congress. So I doubt that these bills passed either, but she did forward or present one bill that said poverty is not neglect, which was an important bill for us because they like to take children because of poverty. And then the other one, and I think Michelle's going to got some more information about this, and she's going to talk about this a little bit, is especially during COVID that the federal law requires that if a child's been in foster care 15 months out of the last 22, that they have to initiate a termination. And I think that is something that they are also, she's also trying to make a change in. So Michelle, your real quick intro. I think most people probably know who you are. And then tell me what you know about what's going on out of Karen Bass's office.
Hi, everyone. And Connie, thank you so much for hosting this live with me, and also for partnering with me on Family Forward California. It has been an honor to work together. And I love that we're doing this in California, and I know you've got Tennessee on lockdown, and slowly we're going to chip away at getting everyone else in other states to rise up together with us, right? That's absolutely it. We have to support each other. We don't have to like each other, but we have to support each other, right?
Right.
It doesn't matter what your views are. The bottom line is we cannot get this done unless we all work together. And so that being said, my name is Michelle Chan. I am founder and director. We call ourselves California Families Rise, but we used to call ourselves Parents Against CPS Corruption. We are professional, non-professional, amateur, whatever you want to call it, agitators. We hit the streets. We lobby. We use narrative storytelling to shift perspectives and to build momentum. So I'm a writer, I'm a journalist, and I also make videos. I get involved in every way I can. So that's me. And we are here in California, and there is some really exciting movement. As you said, Karen Bass, Congresswoman Karen Bass, has been long one of our allies for years. And yeah, it's so nothing has actually stuck yet, but I have to hand it to Karen, is that she continues to advocate. She continues to push. And it's great that before we even talk about what she's proposed, Connie, can we give the listeners a quick summary on what the Adoption and Safe Families Act is? Because her proposed legislation proposes to significantly amend the Adoption and Safe Families Act. The Adoption and Safe Families Act was enacted in 1997 by Bill Clinton and Congress. And what it did was it changed the way the Title 4E funding worked, right? And it shifted it shifted the emphasis of the child welfare system from family preservation into what they call permanency.
Mm-hmm.
And the idea was that children were languishing in foster care indefinitely. And so what it did was it created these perverse incentives to remove children, to destroy families, and to adopt children out forever. And one of the most concerning provisions in the adoption ASFA, in addition to the perverse financial incentives, are the really restrictive timelines that Connie was talking about, 15 out of 22 months. And I like to call it the COVID-19 orphan train, because that timeline didn't stop the clock. And in fact, I just covered a story with a grandmother whose son couldn't access his services during COVID because all the welfare offices were closed, and his Medi-Cal was in one county and his case was in another county. It was a technical issue that, had it not been for COVID, he would have been able to go to the government office and get it ironed out, get the case switched the way, but everything was closed. And lo and behold, now they were TPR'd. And it didn't matter that he couldn't access his services. That clock never stopped. They said, well, you haven't seen your kid in a year, and to me, you look like a piece of shit. That's just how they look at all of us parents, right? I
Yeah,
mean,
yeah. Well, and it was also a problem because services were not available. People
right.
had not shifted to doing Zoom therapy. I mean, who ever thought Zoom therapy would be a thing, right?
Right.
And their assessments are all now AI and online. And I had cases that I came into that people were trying to do their family visitation, a 10-month-old child with a Zoom visitation. I mean,
Wow.
I had him record it and I watched it. I mean, and it was just horrible. It was horrible. So I know, I'm one attorney. I can only do so much. I can only, I just don't have the resources to really go all over the place. But, there were cases that came to me right about June and July of 2020, where people came to me and they said, look, I thought I was going to get my child back, and they cut us off.
Right.
They won't send the child home. They won't give us a trial home visit. Caseworker won't come to my home. They won't do a home study. CASA won't come to the home. They won't let me see my child. I mean, it literally went into a dead stop. And, by late August, early September, I was like, no way. We are not going to go into a black hole on this.
And then what happens after a year of a child, especially young children, not seeing their parents, wondering what happened, feeling abandoned? It's only a matter of time before that child feels abandoned and gets angry and acts out toward the parent, and they can't talk. They don't know what happened. All they know is a year went by and they're rotting away in some stranger's house or in a group home. And it's that at that point, once the parent-child bond has deteriorated and the child thinks they don't want to come home, it's a done deal.
Yeah.
So
yeah. Let's talk about what Karen Bass has, kind of a couple of the steps that she took, which are actually just extremely logical. I'm not sure that any of it's passed, but what did you see that she did out of her office?
Okay. So the bill was introduced on recently, November 4th of 2021. And it's called the 21st Century Children and Families Bill. And what what it does is it amends the adoption. It amends ASFA in a few ways. It also points to equity, which ties in with the criminalization of poverty. Right, poverty is not neglect, and really highlighting that we are really. It also emphasizes kinship placement. I don't actually have the details exactly how it plans to target that, so I'm going to find out, and maybe we can talk about that next time. But I do have more. I have details on the timelines, which I think are great, and I'll tell you why these. So it's currently, as it is, parents have 15 out of 22 months to get their act together and to get their case moving, finish their it's not enough even to have your services finished. You have to complete them, and you actually have to be showing that you're moving your case forward. So, like, let's say in California, I know in Contra Costa County, it happened to a lot of parents that I know where they were understaffed. There were a lot of internal problems, and parents finished their case plan, but the caseworkers would be fired or they would quit and they wouldn't even know in their case. They would never move out of supervised visits, and come time for their hearing,
Right.
because they're still
Right.
on it, they got TPR'd even though they'd done everything, but they hadn't moved forward. And the
Yeah.
court had expected them to, and no one communicated that. So it is, I mean, this is a very, very, I mean, this is the civil, TPR is the civil death penalty.
It
Once
is.
the TPR, there's nothing that I know that can turn it back until the child gets old enough. And almost in so many cases, they sometimes do come home and find them, but you don't really know
Well,
if that's going to happen, right?
yeah, and I call it generational genocide because you take a
Right,
child, it's really government social engineering. I mean, you take a
right,
child and you recreate their whole world and their
right,
genealogy, right? You
right.
remove their genealogy from them. So,
Exactly.
it's a very crucial thing. Now, and I always tell people with the caveat, I'm an adoptive parent and my children came from Russia and they were in, pretty bad situations and I love them to death. We have a great family. It's like God put us
Mhm.
together. But
Yeah,
I've just worked with so many families where there's, even if the family can't rehabilitate or there's substance abuse, there's another family member somewhere that
right,
that child probably knows or has a
right,
relationship with, that they should have a right to continue to develop and have some connection to their family of origin. That's one
right.
of my continued frustrations. Now I know, there are situations that it's just not going to work. And I just pray for those families and those children and hope they get good matches. But it's so complicated. But my number one thing is we know that there are some 700,000 children in foster care. We know that 85% of those are there under neglect, not abuse. And we
Mhm.
know that about half of those, there's some type of substance abuse. Now, substance abuse is a horrible thing. You can't raise a child and be an addict. You just can't. However, people do recover,
Right.
and I mean, there are studies out there now that says that a child would rather be with their parent, even if it's not a perfect home, than to be totally stripped from their loving parent that they knew for, several years. I mean, half of the kids are removed at 6 years old and under. So we're taking children who are in a very fragile state of emotional development and they're putting them in the homes of strangers and we're ripping that
And we're
bond
rolling the
away.
dice too, because we don't really know what the outcome will be in those homes either. And a lot of
Absolutely.
times they don't readily bond to those parents. And I mean, I think I've said this before, what better job for a child predator than to be a foster parent? I mean, there
Well,
are bad
yeah.
people that do these jobs for the wrong reason. So
Yes.
this legislation seeks to address that, at least. So it would take the 15 out of 22 timeline, and it gives parents a baseline of 24 months starting, but it also creates exemptions. So let's say a parent can show that they are really trying to engage in their service plan, right? Let's say, for example, let's say something like COVID happens again,
Mhm.
and it's just taking them longer, but they were trying and they're still engaging in their case plan, but they're in phase 2 and not phase 4. As long as they can show that they're still actively engaging and they're really trying, they can keep that case, it's my understanding, indefinitely, which I think is for the parents that are really trying. And because when we TPR, we're not just giving up on the parents, we're also cutting that child off from the entire family and community. And sometimes the grandparents, or there are other family members that need more time to try to become caretakers and approved with the uh, FPA. I don't remember what they called it, the foster approval process. So
Mhm.
that's really exciting. And let me take a look at what else they had. Oh, and there was also this bill is especially significant in California because according to when ASFA was written and passed into law, it allowed states to adopt the timelines differently, and to have create more restrictive timelines if they choose. And California is, I believe, one of 5 states that chose to adopt stricter timelines for children under 3,
Mm.
aka otherwise known as more adoptable, right? So in
Exactly.
California, if you have a child that is under 3, the agency can and often does move to adopt the children after 6 months. So for anyone that has ever been through a child welfare case or that has ever struggled with substance abuse, 6 months, I mean, that if everything goes perfect, you're lucky if it's done, if you're ready in 6 months. I
Yeah.
mean, they're basically really just saying that for the little ones, they're too cute and adoptable. They don't want to give you a chance at all. I know a lot of people whose children were just swept out. My child was almost taken and adopted out under that provision. So
Wow.
that's Welfare and Institutions Code 366.21. So Karen Bass's legislation, it would override that, and which is
Mm.
amazing. And I think I don't have for you. I'll look it up. I'll see which other states, but I'll find out which other states this goes for, and I wonder if it also would override the timelines in those other states as well. I
Well,
need to.
if it's federal, of course it would,
Yeah.
right? It would be a
Okay.
federal law because she is a congresswoman. She's not a state legislator. So she's in
Right.
Congress, and if she can get Congress to pass it. So, I do want to say, this other thing with parents having to meet the timelines. I mean, I've had situations where DCS doesn't get the services lined up, right? Or if they're supposed to do a psych eval, it takes them 4 months to get it set up. And then these parents have so many things that they have to do. And always they put in there that you have to have a full-time job, and, you have to have a home, and you have to have transportation. Well, if parents are trying to meet all these other criteria,
Right.
they frequently can't go get a full-time job, right? Or they don't have a car. So a full-time job is an issue. So, I mean, it's really a societal, cultural issue in many instances. And I will say, I mean, I'm in Tennessee, I'm in a metropolitan area, but I have been in at least a third of Tennessee's 95 counties. And that includes a lot of rural counties. And through the Family Forward Project, where we have about 16,000 people now, they are people from all over. And I get phone calls every day. And the rural counties are wrought with substance abuse. I mean, they are wrought with substance abuse. It is so frightening. And we need to have some huge economic relief there. And I
Mhm.
mean, I'm a conservative fiscally and politically, but there have got to be some things that are brought up in these small communities that allows these people to have some relief.
Right. So we need to address the root causes. And that's another issue that I have with child welfare and substance abuse is that, they are using this is a war on drugs. It is
Mhm.
not about child safety. And I think Carlos Morales himself said that it was a war on drugs. I mean, they're going after, but it's a very ineffective way to treat substance abuse, because if anyone knows anything about substance abuse, it is most often rooted in trauma. And
Mhm.
and so what happens when you have your children removed? You go through more trauma. Almost everyone I know, people I know that really did have substance abuse issues. And I had substance abuse. It was one of the issues in my case as well. My case was about domestic violence and substance abuse. And it was something that I used to heal from trauma that I had been through. And it was something obviously that I could get through. I got through it, and I am 100% clean and
Mhm.
sober. It's not even a question. But I want to say that being treated, not just going through the child welfare system, but being treated the way I was treated in the child
Yeah.
welfare system made it
Crazy.
so much worse. And they would take your kids, and then these cold-hearted social workers say to you, "Oh, take this time to work on healing." But how is that? How does that
Mhm.
make any sense? Because now I need to heal from the worst trauma I have ever been through, which is taking my child. And
No, and they
and
and
I need.
they throw wrenches in it. They stop things. I had an attorney call me. I get a lot of attorneys who call me on the sly, ask for my advice, and they're like, "Connie, this situation's happened. What do I do?" And I have a case where DCS was ordered twice to do an expedited ICPC to be able to get the child to a grandparent in another state, and DCS refused to do it. They flat refused to do it and said they weren't even going to staff having that transfer anymore. So there
Wow.
are things that they do to intentionally
Oh yeah.
throw wrenches in it.
It's abuse of power, and
Yeah.
it's absolute power corrupts absolutely. I don't know any other job on this planet where one person, aka a social worker, has just complete and utter power over another person and an
Mhm.
entire family. And in almost more cases than I know, the caseworkers, I mean, some deep down inside have hearts of gold and they're great people, but the bad ones are rotten to the core, and they will
Yeah.
torture parents just because they have the power to do so. That's what Nancy Schaefer said in her speech, that they just obliterate families simply because they have the power to do so. And this is not true in every single case, but definitely there are cases where and workers that do that simply because they can. And that's why all of us parents, all of us warrior attorneys like Connie, we all need to come together, because the reason why they're able to do that is because there's no one holding them accountable.
Mm-hmm.
So, I
Mm-hmm.
mean, I want to tell you, when we are coming together in the Bay Area, we're a very localized parent activist group. They cross their T's and dot their I's a little more when we're putting them on blast. Maybe not specifically to those of us that are throwing rocks at them, but in other cases, people are coming out like this, like, oh, guess what? They upheld my rights in court while you guys were
right.
screaming their name. And I was like, well, yeah, they better, right? Because they don't want you to walk out of that courtroom and come downstairs and join us.
Yeah.
Right. So,
Yeah,
I mean, so I can't stress enough, everyone, we all need to participate in this process, even if it means just sharing your story online, sharing our live video, liking our posts, joining our groups, and calling your legislators. Just every little bit matters, but it's really important, because otherwise that's how we take power back. Mm-hmm. Power in numbers. So yeah, I think that's the update that I have. Let me see if I'm missing anything else. I mean, I'll come back with more, but I know
Okay, so I will tell you, and I put in the comments, and I've noticed we're on, for all of you watching, we're doing this through StreamYard. So StreamYard allows several different platforms to be live streamed at once. And I know somebody made a comment, they were watching the stream on my personal YouTube channel, where I do have a lot of videos posted, but I very rarely do lives on my YouTube video channel. I usually make a video on Facebook, and then upload it over to YouTube, and then reshare it, so I make sure it gets distributed. So I would like to, develop more watching through the live YouTube, but there are about 4 or 5 different platforms. I mean, different groups in which we are currently live streaming. And so thank you all for being here, and please also share it. I did put in the comments that one of the places to get some good kind of update information is Imprint. Imprint is a publication, and I just Googled Imprint Karen Bass, and I got they are very, very good at pulling together the history of stories. And so I just want to tell you about a couple of them that came up. One of them is from January the 14th of this year, just about a week ago, I guess. Yep. And it says New York allows overnight respite care for children despite shadow foster care concerns. Now, let me tell you, this whole issue of shadow foster care came up in a big story probably last year or maybe a year and a half ago. And it's also shown up in several legal treatises, etc. So shadow foster care is basically, I mean, it's not necessarily a bad thing. What it is people who cannot take care of their children allow somebody else to raise their child. Okay. So this frequently happens with relatives. It can happen in other situations, but this whole article and this whole concern was like, yikes, people are giving their children to other people to raise, and we don't have any oversight of it. Now, all of you who like big government and like big oversight, you're like, oh my gosh. But I mean, in reality, in America, we've done that for a couple of centuries. So anyway, this is talking about New York allowing overnight respite care, and it is about the Child Welfare Agency has approved regulations authorizing families in times of crisis to place their children with a host family home. Now, this is just a short synopsis of this article, and I'm going to kind of go back and read it and look at it a little bit closer. But what I hope that this does is that it creates a foster, really like a short-term foster system. Okay, so if a parent needs to go into inpatient rehab and they know it's going to take 3 weeks, they need to go to detox, and then they need a couple weeks of rehab, that they can use like a short-term foster placement. So I'm going to look at this a little bit closer, but it looks like maybe they're going to do that. I have said this for a long time. This has been one of my things. It's like, why aren't you fostering a family instead of fostering a child? Now it becomes very complicated. And I always say that foster parents, there's nothing special about a foster parent. All you have to have is a high school education and, a bank account, basically, right? So you don't, and not be a felon, right? But other than that, you can be a foster parent. Foster parents have no special training in mental health, early childhood development, medical training. They're not required to have any of that. But so I understand there's a distinction between kind of taking on a child for a weekend and then sort of, kind of helping a family rehabilitate. And I certainly don't expect non-professional people to help a family for like substance abuse. But this is talking about allowing a overnight or a short-term respite care for children. Now I want to look at, there was something else I saw here. There was an article by Kathleen Creamer, Due Process Disparity, ASFA, and More. And that is by Kathleen Creamer, with Kathleen Creamer. And John Kelly did a podcast on this. And John Kelly has done an excellent job. John Kelly understands foster care. He's done several articles on it. So that would be a good one to look at and go through. There's another one on Medicaid reform for children's mental health services. There's a new study out about 18 to 25-year-olds who commit crimes. And I am betting that it says the field of emerging adult justice is new in the U.S., but the research that informs this field is well established. And it talks about the authors. And I'm going to guarantee you, if I pop this article open, they're going to say a large percentage of the criminals between 18 and 25 were children who were in foster care, because we already know those stats.
It's the pipeline.
Yeah, the pipeline. So those are just some articles that pop up on Imprint. I mean, what I'm asking you to do is that, and I have, through Family Forward Project, I have always said, I'm looking for people with skills. I'm looking for people who are researchers. I'm looking for people who can carry a message. I'm looking for people who are organizers. And I'm going to say that there have been some researchers that have risen to the top, man. And I get people through Messenger every day, find a new article here or there that they're sending me that I can then share. And they know that I'm sharing it through Family Forward and continuing to grow that audience and that knowledge. So I want to thank people for that. And before we get off here today, I'm going to talk about developing your message, because this is an election year. We need to be able to talk, to speak, to share this word. There have been so many stories come out about child welfare in the past 2 months. I mean, Illinois is totally imploding. Missouri is totally imploding. Ohio is, and Tennessee is. And I am working with a reporter who has probably covered about 15 stories in the past 2 months over DCS. So I want to, yes, and I see a comment here. 80% of prostitution comes from foster homes. And we know that 60% of child trafficking comes from foster care. So it is truly a social crisis.
Yeah. And Connie, did you want to tell us some about the updates and the developments on the legislative work you have been doing in Tennessee?
Yeah, thank you. So in Tennessee, I went last week was the opening day. It's at the races. It truly is like going to the races. If you've ever been involved if you've ever watched horse racing, and I lived in Kentucky for quite a while, and we had Louisville Downs there, and it was always this very opening day at the races is always very exciting, but it's opening day. And so what happens is you have people coming in. We have a pretty big issue. We have redistricting. That is this big issue that everybody's chattering about, but it's really good to go in the first few days of the General Assembly and try to make some appointments. But you can also just walk around, and I have over the past 2 years, I've sort of developed a hit list of people that I know have at least a modicum of interest in child welfare reform, or I know I have people in their district. And so Bakura came down here with me. She's from Virginia. And we walked through, and, there were a couple people that we just caught them. There's no receptionist in there. There's no secretary. There's nobody keeping us away from them. We just walked into their office, say, can we chat with you a few moments? And we were able to have some very successful discussions. So what I did, oh my gosh, I did not bring it in here. I may have to go get it in just a second. I did a couple things. One of them is I made a hit list. And my hit list, one side of it was about what I was asking for in an audit. So Tennessee had a really bad audit in December 2020, basically saying that they weren't keeping their records. I mean, children lost in the system. The employees hated their jobs. I mean, it was horrible. It was just horrible. So every year they come to the legislature, and they do this in all the states. So I want you all to know this, and you need to make a note about this. Every year they come and ask for more money. They go to the state legislature and they ask for about $50 million more. So I had gone through and I had done a list from 2013 to 2020 of what their annual budget was. And it went from 733 million to 933 million. So they had grown by over 200 million in that short time period. So we know that they're also getting a lot of the Title IV is dollar for dollar. So they're also getting a huge amount from federal funding. And so they always come in and they go, well, we really need more money because we don't have enough caseworkers. They're underpaid. They're overworked. And so on my audit hit list, the very first thing I put was I want them to audit what the employees do with their time. And this is very easy to track these days. You could get an app for QuickBooks and you can do timekeeping. There's all kinds of really, really cheap timekeeping apps, and they could have it on their phone because they all have a government issued phone now, and they could do it on their phone, and they could put in their time, and they could put in their travel time. I mean, just like lawyers have to do, they could put in the time they're spending with the client, and then they could put in the time they're being in court. Because I tell these legislators, look, I'm on the ground. I'm in the trenches. I see what's going on. Right. These caseworkers, every time I go to court, there's 4 or 5 of them sitting in court all day doing nothing.
Right.
So they cannot service children by sitting in the courtroom, and they're not all needed in the courtroom. So we, especially these days, because now we're doing so much Zoom, even with the court, that they could pop on for a Zoom if they had to for a court hearing instead of sitting in the lobby all day. So that was number 1 on my hit list. And then I had several other things asking about how much they were using ex parte orders, how long they were keeping them in care. That's another thing it's very hard to track, which is how long are we keeping children in foster care? Is the number of months increasing?
And last year, tracking their outcomes too, right?
Yeah.
Like, are they really, and they're not? Well,
there are reports. There is through the Americans ACF, so Administration of Children and Families is the federal agency, and they do have a report every year called Child Maltreatment. And you can get reports nationally and on every state for the number of children entering foster care, et cetera. So you can get it. It's a little hard to read. It's kind of deceiving. For instance, it'll have like the number of children in foster care. Well, remember, that's the number of children in foster care on one given day of the year. And it's usually September 30th because their fiscal year ends June 30th. So when they say number of children in foster care, they're not talking about the total number of children that have spent some time in foster care during the year. Yeah, they're just talking about that one single day. So, our commissioner, Jennifer Nichols, did come, and she did admit that children were spending more time in foster care now, which is not something to brag about. That's worse, right? You're doing a worse job. So, so then I had a hit list of things that I wanted changed in the law, and I'm asking for a family advocate. So I tried to think of what is like the simplest thing, what's one little thing that I can ask for that then I can have an impact through training others. And so I asked for a law that says that the court will appoint a family advocate. And the state rep that is looking at doing that for me, she's like, well, what do they do? What are you going to do? Who's going to train him? How are you going to handle it? And I said, look, 15 years ago, CASA came to you and said, we want a law that you'll appoint a CASA worker in a case. You didn't ask CASA what their training was going to be. You didn't ask CASA, how many people they were going to have available. You just said, okay, right? You just said, okay. And now CASA gets $1 million a year from the state taxpayers. So I've already got several different parts of this type of training laid out, which is really just how to handle yourself as an advocate, the basis of law that you need to be able to talk to parents and help educate them, how you help guide them, how you help them document their case, how you help them learn to communicate, and how you support them. I know I was
Right.
talking to a client yesterday. I represent a mom, and we were discussing a counselor who's really just riveted the case. I mean, she's like done horrible things in the case. We finally got the records. We found out that all these other people are influencing her. And my client's like, I'm afraid to go talk to her. And I'm like, no, you're going to walk right into the fire and you're going to say, look, here's my concerns. I want to get my attorney on the line. I want my attorney to participate in our first session so we can know, what gaps we need to fill for you. So I really am hoping we can do that. I've got some other things I'm working on too. I'm not quite ready to talk about, but it'll all be
Right.
developing within the next 10 days.
Well, I think I'm really excited to this project develop. I know in New York City they had something going like that, and I mean there is nothing. I'm just having an advocate that is from an outside funding source that's not paid by the. I mean, because I know when I had a case, they assigned advocates to me, but they were paid just like the ombuds people. They're paid by the same. It has to be an independent. It has to be an independent agency, and there's nothing more independent than Family Forward Project. I think that would be great things. I think this is really exciting, and I did want to talk about something in the governor's budget in California coming up. I know that we have we're part California Families Rise, but we're also partnering with Family Forward California. So it's relevant. As I was talking to Connie earlier, as part of the Title 4D rules, foster child parents have to pay child support in some counties, at least in California, and apparently in many other places across the nation, for their children while they are in foster care. And I want to tell you, I did not have to pay child support for my son when he was in foster care. If I did, I'm going to be honest right now, I may have. I was already almost suicidal. I'm just going to be honest right here. And I couldn't imagine having to pay that bill on top of it because I was already poor. I could like you say, you're going through the system. You have to pay for an attorney. If you can't pay for an attorney, you're screwed. And then on top of it, you have to do classes, parenting classes, anger management classes. Even if your case isn't about drugs, they'll probably make you drug test anyway. You have to go to see a therapist. You have to get psychological evaluations. And in my case, they sent me to 3 because they kept coming back normal. And they were like, we don't, it's like, they just kept sending me in. They were sending me in indefinitely. I mean, how are you supposed to work? And then on top of it, you're paying child support. You have to maintain. I mean, it's just, to me, it just seems so inhumane. I mean, unless someone can really afford it, but I just think it's just an added. But so the government, the governor's budget included, I think, if I don't remember the name or how they called it, but basically, if in California, if your child is on public benefits and they consider foster care a public benefit, that you're required, the paying parent has to pay child support to repay those public benefits. But even after you come off of those benefits, you have to pay it all back indefinitely, which is really actually it's improper because now these are mostly low income and middle income families that really need that child support. And now they have to pay. I mean, the foster care benefits are really expensive. They give the foster parents and the group homes way more services than we do. So his budget is proposing, if it passes, that after they come off of the public benefits, that they then won't have to pay it anymore after they're off of it. And I think that makes a lot of sense because, I mean, these are children that are home from foster care and they need that money in their pocket, not in the government's pocket. And these are families that were already struggling. So anyone in California, please call your state assembly and your state senator and ask them to support child support reform and child support reform in the budget. Okay.
Wow. Okay. And I'll tell you, under Title 4D, which is also a federal law, Title 4D requires the state to do a child support order if a child's been in foster care for 10 days. I mean, that is a federal law. And to get their Title 4D money, they're supposed to do it. Now, I don't know who's tracking it. I don't know who's like watching it, right?
Yeah.
So, but I do know that's a requirement. Now, there are a few courts who will say, well, I'm only going to, I have to do child support, but you guys have got enough to deal with. I'm going to make it $25 a month or $25 a child, right? And so, but they have to be real careful, because if they don't have some child support order, they will still, in Tennessee, you can terminate parental rights if a parent has not paid child support for 4 months, whether or not there's an order. And so we also have a law now in Tennessee, horrible law that needs to be changed, that says if you're in the middle of a dependency case and the department decides to go and do your TPR, that you lose all your rights to finish your dependency case. So they totally, I think this is so horribly unconstitutional, but they will close your dependency case. They won't let you go any further with it, and they will go to TPR. So I have said, poverty is not a reason to end somebody's parental rights forever. Oh my God, in 4 months, I think we know now with COVID that it's pretty easy to be without a job for 4 months.
Yeah. And let's also just let's just recognize what parents are going through when they're in the system, what families are going through. It is abnormal if you don't have PTSD. I mean, honestly. So everyone is going through PTSD, experiencing, they were probably already struggling when the case opened, because a lot of times, sometimes it's personal crisis that causes some problems. And then going through the system is just, I went through the system. I aged 50 years in the time that I was in the system. I can't believe I'm alive today. Just the everyday trauma, and then what the system puts on you. And now you add in the money part. I mean, it's insanity. This system needs to change. And I'm just so glad, Connie, that you're here still fighting the fight with us. I don't know how you do it in the courtroom and then outside of the courtroom. I mean, being involved in the individual cases is so difficult because the system is so screwed up that honestly, people ask me for help all the time. And I'll be honest, until we fix the entire system, I don't have a lot of faith in the individual cases. We can give you support, we can give you advice, but the problem, there's so much wrong with the system that you can do everything right in your case. One person on the case doesn't like you. Oh, well.
Usually that might be judge, that might be a caseworker. Yeah. And really the best advice at this time, while we're trying to shove this elephant into a closet, is to say, be persistent, take notes, document everything, get up every day and just move one step forward. I mean, that's great advice. I mean, I know my spiritual gifts are advocacy and encouragement. And sometimes it's me, sending a text message saying, just get up and do it, just go do this, and I know some of my clients are like, oh my God, Connie's texting me. Connie's going to call me and tell me to go do something. But, I am seeing through Family Forward Project. And if you are not in there, if you're joining us on another group, or if you're on YouTube, it has about 16,000 members. And we have worked real hard to grow that. Facebook chops us up once in a while and takes some of our members away. We also have a Family Forward Project page, and I'll probably share this to the page afterwards. I try to put a lot of stories on there. But I am seeing people having progress after years. Yeah. I mean, I see people posting that they got their children back after 4 years. I'm like,
Connie, some of the leaders in our group in CFR that have been protesting along my side for years, some of their children are coming home, and for different reasons. I mean, and I've been really surprised. And even in cases where they were closed and TPR'd, what happens is it's not a fairy tale. Adoption is not always the answer. And I mean, the system didn't actually do better for these children, and eventually they do find their parents. And now the system has the option of either arresting the children for running away and going home. But recently I've seen it happening where they're not really doing that as much. They're just letting them go, which is great.
Yeah, so I did a interview with a foster mom from Kentucky about a week ago, week and a half ago, and her story. I mean, it's and I'm going to do that. The child who's now 19 has agreed to let me interview her as well, but she was a foster parent. She had a girl in her home. They had a great relationship. And then she ended up with another foster child. And the second foster child made a complaint against her and alleged abuse. So the agency came and took both children out of the home. And they put her, they put her foster daughter in somebody else's home, and she ran away, and she was gone. They didn't know where she was. And a few weeks later, she shows up at this foster mom's home, and she didn't report it. She's just like, I'm not going to report it. They're going to rip her out of my home again. I'll just homeschool her. I'll just make sure, I'm going to make sure she's fed. I don't need the money. And she was in her home for several months until something happened that they found out. I think they came to her door or something, but they found out that they were there, and they ripped her out of the home again, put her in another foster home. She ran away again. And this time she was afraid to come back to her foster mom. And so finally, but you know what? She got up every day. She fought it. She fought it. She fought it. She's finally, I mean, they're together, and she's adopted her, and that it's finally family. But I mean,
Yeah.
there are foster parents that are realizing that this is not working either. I
Yeah.
will say another thing that I've located is on Facebook. There is a group called Former Foster Children. It is a private group. They do
Mhm.
kind of scoot that, look at you before they let you in. But there are young adults there who are in foster care. And there's actually even some teenagers that are still in foster care who get into the group. And they come in, and every single one of them, they talk about their attachment issues and their trust issues, every single one of them.
Right. Right.
And
Wow.
did
Well,
you know? I mean, I know your child was in foster care for a while. Did you notice changes?
oh my God, when he came home, Connie, for months after he came home, he woke up in the night screaming.
Mm.
And it would break your heart. I mean, he would just scream. And he said he had these nightmares that he would just wake up and the whole house would be crumbling. And I mean, my son is only 9 today, but he can tell you so much. Like, I hope that he grows up and he speaks out against foster care. Um, and my son and I are really, really close.
Mm.
And I may have had my personal struggles from time to time, especially when I was dealing with domestic violence, but I'm a great mom. I really am. And my son belongs at home, but if you just I mean, he was a small child, but what he went through, and he wasn't even in the worst foster care placement. I mean, they didn't put him in car seats, they didn't feed him enough, and they were trying to adopt him. They really were. They were openly
Mm.
trying to adopt him because he wasn't like the other children. He was well raised, right? And but he will tell you what it felt like. He just, he said, "Mom, they didn't love me."
Mhm.
That's just what he says. And
Mhm.
he came from a house where he was loved, and it's been so many years, and I still can't. I mean, I'm better with it now. At least there was a point where it was just I couldn't talk about it without hysterically crying. But that was my greatest regret with him being in foster care, was not the pain that I went through, but the pain that he was
Absolutely.
going through.
Absolutely.
And
I will tell you, yesterday I had in my office a young man who's now 12, and he was put in foster care. And I mean, it was shocking. It was ex parte. It was a bad mistake. I mean, the mother had not done anything. They just got crazy on her. I mean, she dug in and she got her child out of foster care, but it took like 2 months.
yeah,
And he came in and met with me yesterday, and he's going to do a special project for school and for kids in government. And he's going to use foster care as an example of something that needs to be changed and do a
oh, that's
proposal.
great. Yeah,
Yeah,
and
that's amazing.
I want to uplift what Connie was saying earlier, for people to just keep going and to never give up, and just get up and do, just even if it's one thing, just get up and do it. And I just want to say, I want to uplift this, because I was there once, and there was a point where I was the model client, and then I fell to pieces for a little while there. And then one day I got up and I pulled myself together. And I want everyone to know I was inches away from having my parental rights terminated. And anyone that knows anything about the timeline of these cases, that's normally past the point of no return. Most people that get to that point where they have their services terminated, can't go turn it backwards, but I never gave up. I wasn't going to give up. And it, sure enough, slowly but surely, I got expanded visits, and my case was kept open for a long time. And I reunified with my son today, and now I'm actually even co-parenting with his dad. Things are great. I mean,
Mhm.
I mean, I just want to tell everyone that when I was in the system, some people were like, just pull it together. And I mean, it's just this dark cloud came over me. And one day a light turned on. And
Mm.
I was like, wow, if I don't pull it together, I'm going to lose him forever.
That's
He's
right.
going to grow up and he's going to be in jail. He's going to be homeless. He's going to be addicted to drugs. I mean, if he lost me, nothing good would have come of his life.
Right. No.
So,
Mm-mm.
yeah, we just have to keep going and we have to pull it together. And I mean, I made the best of it. I took the experience, my lived experience, and I turned something positive into it. And I mean, it's okay. I'm not, of course, I would rather have none of it ever happened, but at least I can say, I can sit here and feel bad for myself, or I could take that experience and help others. So at
Mhm.
least it wasn't something that I wasted, right? At least it was
Yeah.
some good came out of it. And
Yeah.
that's the silver lining, even though I'm not sure if my child sees it like that.
Yeah, I know. Well, that's what I told this 12-year-old. I'm like, at some point, it would be you need to be able to say, because he wants to cover this topic and he doesn't want to talk about his personal experience. Yep, go ahead. I'm just going to talk to people. But he wants to be able to, I said it would be so helpful and beneficial for you to be able to articulate that this was you and this was the pain that you went through. Okay, so as we wrap it up, I am going to put a little ticker here across the banner. Let's see if I can know how to do this. But I want to talk about, and this kind of is a good segue into what you just mentioned, and it's about this mentally of where you are. So let me see if I can put this little ticker up there. Okay, so here it goes. Let's see if it's going to come. Ticker, belief, show. Ah, there we are. It's not very
Oh, I
big, but
love
you
it.
can see it.
I
Okay,
love knowing.
so yeah, so here's what it says. It says belief, conviction, message, method, do it, and persistence. And
Yes.
so let's talk about what that means. So belief means, just as Michelle said, something happens to you and you create a belief about it. And it's based on your environment, what you see, what's happening, how you're processing it. But you create that belief. Your belief is all about me. It's all about how I fit into this, what's happened to me, how it's going to affect me, affect my family. The next step is conviction. And conviction is more about the bigger picture. The conviction is when you go, oh, you know what? I am not alone in this. I am not the only mom who's had her child wrongfully removed. I'm not the only grandparent. This is a bigger issue. And you start to educate yourself on why things are the way they are. And then the third step is you develop what your message is. I say this over and over and over, have a 1 minute, a 3 minute, and a 10-minute speech. Got to write it down. You can make your notes. You can do it however you want. When I'm limited to 3 minutes, I always write my speech out and practice it. But you've got to have your message. You've got to have a 1, 3, and 10-minute speech. Now, that's not the only thing that covers message. I mean, your message can be that you want to stand at the Capitol with a sign that says, I asked for help. They took my kids. I use that as our picture for our event today because somebody posted that. And I'm not sure. I think that might have been out of California. But that your message can be just holding up a sign. Your message can be having a loudspeaker. Your message can be passing out a brochure. But you need to figure out the message and the method. And the method then is going to be, how am I going to do it? Am I going to do flyers? Am I going to do letters? Am I going to do postcards? Am I going to talk? Online? Am I going to just be willing to be interviewed by somebody else? And I would be happy to do that to help you kind of share your story. And then you go and you just do it, and you're persistent about it, and you do it over and over and over. I know that we still feel like our heels are in the quicksand. They are in the quicksand, but we are in a world, we are in a behemoth, a giant demonic system that does no good. I mean, it does more bad than good, and we know that now, and we are opening eyes. So, I just say, let's just keep doing this. And sometimes you just have to refocus on your belief, and you just have to say, because that belief is the root, right? I mean, your belief system, Michelle, about this is how you got to that point. And then your conviction is, okay, I've got to go. I can't leave my child. And you just talked about what would have happened to your child if he would have been left in foster care and adopted. And the thing is, you have to go like, if I don't do something, this is what my child's world is going to look like, right?
Mhm. Right. And we all pull it together, right? And we show them. And I think for me, the I showed the people in my case, and I don't really I want to take responsibility for what happened, but they were crooked as heck in my case. And they knew that. I think once I got this conviction, like you said, and they knew that I was never going to give up. I mean, if they adopted him out, I think they knew that they were going to regret it. I mean,
Mm-hmm.
because they never would have gotten rid of me, right? Like, I mean, and I proved to be an extremely loud, extremely persistent. And you're right. It was just that I really want to say that this is that's what I did, and that's what everyone can and should do. And I mean, even if your children are already adopted out, those children will one day find you online, and what do you want to show them?
Mm-hmm.
So do you want them to see this side of you? Do you want to see them fighting for you? Because if they see you and they find you one day and they see that you never stop fighting for them, they will come back to you one day. They will.
Yes, I agree.
And
And with
so
social media is not going to go away. Our search tools are even stronger and better. And I mean, we talk about, face identification and voice identification now, which seems kind of, surreal and like a deep government operation. But look at voice to text, right? I mean,
Mhm.
we thought voice to text was like a deep high tech government, system just a few years ago, and now we don't even type our own text messages anymore. So, being able to search, use technology that shows if you lost your child at 6, what he would look like at 18. I mean, we're going to have those tools, right? I mean, so that you can take your child, the last picture you have of your child at 4 years old, you can upload it, you can age it, and then you
Right.
can send it out AI, and we will have the technology to find
Yeah.
our children. Okay,
Right.
so y'all government people need to understand it is not going to stop. And
Yeah.
I don't care how much you say, stay off of social media. I've been blasted
It's
for
our
being on social
constitutional
media.
right too. It is not. I'm sorry, those rules of confidentiality, because they gagged me at one point and I was scared, but they were designed to protect the child and also to protect the parents' confidentiality so they
Mhm,
don't take your paperwork and send it to the schools, to the doctors, to your
mhm.
job. It's not supposed to, the legislative
To
intent
protect
was
the government.
not to protect the government from scrutiny, right? Like if a caseworker lies and commits fraud and I mean, that is something that you're allowed to. I mean, the rules of confidentiality are not intended to protect them from that. But it's unfortunately used that
Yeah,
way.
it is. Yeah, and they've used it to silence me. I mean, they're like, "You need to stay off of social media." I'm like, "No." I'm like, "You guys are behind the times that you're not
Right.
using social media." And
Mhm.
they tried to like get sanction me because I had done a post and somebody had made some comments about it, and they're like, "Why didn't you go tell that person to remove their comment, or why didn't you remove their comment?" And I'm like, who am I to do that? I mean,
Right.
I'm not a Nazi censorship person. I mean, this is a place where people can
Right.
speak out about how they feel. It's so much safer to have a place where people can speak out than to
Mhm.
have a place where people bottle it up all the time.
Right.
That is so much more dangerous.
And these are
I've
these are people that were not heard in court, that were not heard in their cases, who never got to tell their side of the story because their lawyers never gave them that opportunity. They never let them know that they have a right to challenge what was on paper. And so maybe coming onto the Family Forward Project and onto your feed, maybe one of the first times that they're able to express things that they haven't
Mhm.
been able to, you're giving them a voice, and that's really important.
Right. Yeah, right. It is for sure. And that's kind of what I'm like. I was like, no, I'm not going to silence people. You're better off knowing. And if you're afraid of these people, you're better off knowing who those people are that you should be afraid of. I mean, if that's
Right.
just where your mentality is, because if they're that upset, they're going to be that upset. So yeah, so we have got to keep rocking and rolling. We cannot stop. We can never give up. We have families, new families are being sucked into the system every single day. I mean,
It's
in
a
every
piece.
state in the United States. So, I want to thank you for being out there in California and keeping up fighting the good fight out there. I jokingly tell people I go west of the Mississippi and my blood pressure goes up a little bit because I'm like, oh gosh, this is so far away. Your states are so big out there, and
Uh,
there's so many people. But I have been. I mean, I've been to Kansas, I've been to Arizona, I've been to
well,
Washington.
we're gonna have you out in California soon, and it'll be exciting. I'm hoping sometime soon we are going to have an event, and I'm trying my best to raise some money so that we could help people that want everyone that's really active on social media. I want to have them together in one place,
Yeah.
and I want to have it too. I want to live stream the whole time. I want to share
Mhm.
stories. We will have, I just that's a vision that I have. I haven't given up on it, and I'm hoping to partner with you and I'm hoping to see you.
Yeah.
And I know that I'm thrilled to be working with you, Connie. I'm
Oh, thank
thrilled
you.
to see the work that you do and your drive. So I just want to keep encouraging you and let them keep sanctioning you. You're doing something right.
Well, yeah.
I
Let
mean,
them. Well, I can hold my own pretty well. I mean, I'm
yeah,
pretty clear. I mean, here's the thing. I don't I don't lie, cheat, and steal. Okay. I don't steal money from people. I don't lie. I don't cheat. I follow the rules. I know the law. But I call people out
well, you're not a CPS worker.
right, and I call them out when they're not following the law. I call them out when
Right.
they're not doing the right thing, and they do not like that because, 90% of attorneys just go, "Yes, sir," and walk away, and here's a court order, and I guess this is it, even though you violated due process, even though you violated everybody's rights, even though you didn't hear the evidence, I guess this is the way it's gonna be, and that is, just, I mean, it's outrageous. It's truly outrageous. So,
Wow.
all right, y'all. So I don't want to go. I know y'all have been very patient and I want people to watch it if they've missed it. And I have this thing that I think if they see it's over an hour, they're not going to do it. But there'll be some more people watching
Okay.
when they go to bed tonight. There'll be some people pulling it up and looking at it, or when they or when they have coffee in the morning. So please keep your eyes open for us. I wish we were sophisticated enough and organized enough to give you a set time every week, like some people have been able to do. I have a lot of burdens on me as far
Mhm.
as writing briefs, drafting briefs, things
Right.
that end up having deadlines on them that are very stressful. And there are sometimes it'll be like a week and I can't do anything. But I know Michelle and I were going to try to do this last week, and I had a brief deadline that I had to do. So
I
please be
understand that.
patient with us. Yeah, that is going to clear up. I'm
Mhm.
changing a bunch of things about how I do, and I'm about briefed out in my life. So anyway, we are going to say good Saturday afternoon to everybody, and thank you so much for joining us. And Michelle, last word.
Share this video.
Yay! Thank
Bye.
you.
Happy New
Bye
Year.
bye. Bye bye.